like Vic said, I'm Tim.
I'm Harry.
We're Native Screen Print Company. Thank you guys so much for coming out. I see so many familiar faces and so many new faces, so it's rad to see all you guys come out and support. We are a small screen print company based out of Longwood, Florida. We specialize in ink and paper. We don't do anything else but paper. We've dedicated our whole lives to being nerds about this specific type of printing, and it's what we love to do. So we're going to tell you a little bit about our background, where we come from, and then how we came to find each other in a time before Tinder and things like that, and how we started a business together and have been with each other ever since, basically. So without further ado, this is Harry.
That is me realizing that I could be hardcore. No. So my creative journey in art started when I was young. My mom is very creative. Would do drawing classes at RISD, and when I got older, like probably around that age, I was doing ceramic stuff. Oh, I grew up in Rhode Island. That's how that. Why I was at RISD. I'd fly there just to do a week-long class. Anyway, so I was always into drawing, coloring, and in high school, I moved overseas to Vienna, Austria, where I couldn't really do much in school, just couldn't remember things. I understood how things worked, but testing was just rough. But art made sense, and being exposed to all this kind of like Renaissance era art or Art Deco and the museums that were there, I was like, wow, cool. Like, I couldn't really get it. Until I went to college at Ringling in Sarasota, and I was painting like oil paints, and I was like, oh my God, this is how they did it? They're amazing. Like, I need to go back and look at that, but the closest I could get was in a book, and none of it came fast, so it was just super hard, and I was like really pushing myself to just be integrated into the art and to just absorb whatever process anyone was teaching. I had someone tell me that a professor tell me that I wasn't all that great at seeing color or painting, so I took a 6-hour long painting class on a Wednesday. It was just from 9 to 3 painting figures, which was insane. It was super hard, but it made the hours go by to where, if you're working on something for, 200,000 hours, you really get the hang of it. I didn't come close to that, but it really helped me understand how to mix color, temperature, value, all this stuff. And through that, I started to realize that, like, I don't want to be a painter. I might try look at graphic art. Illustration, they had to take a typography class for a credit, and everyone was super upset about that because they're like, we're illustrators, we paint, we draw, we do this. And but I was like, no, that, type with art, it's always been that way, through the ages. It's almost been ever since advertising was a thing. But then I started to look at rock art and jazz art and how the type is distorted and how those things kind of gave way to punk scene and just ripping and crumpling stuff up and scanning it and just real haphazard, and that really interested me, and that's how I started to kind of do my art. And I met a friend who was a screen printer in the fine arts department, and she showed me screen printing, and I was like, that's how all this stuff was made. I had no idea what silkscreen was, what serography was. These were all super foreign, no one was really teaching that. And so there was one class, printmaking, that I took in my senior year. I also took a letterpress class that was separate, but there was one project where we screen printed a poster, and that changed everything. And after I graduated, I went through my Ladies of Letterpress book, my People of Print book, and just whoever's contact info was in there, I was emailing hey, I can work for you. I can be in the shop. I can learn how to do this. And no one really responded, or they said, we're just a mom and pop. We aren't hiring. But I saw on Instagram that Mama Sauce was looking for a junior. I don't even remember the title that y'all are looking for.
It was help for me.
Yeah, help for this guy. And so I landed a phone interview, and I just lied my ass off. I was like, I'm in the shop all the time. I'm helping everybody. Like, I know how to do this front to back. You only have to teach me like, I don't know, like 40%. It was more like 89%. Like, I pulled ink through a screen. That's what I did. So ended up landing that job and just being exactly how I was in school, just really wide-eyed, paying attention to everything, asking a bunch of questions, being annoying. I didn't care. I was like, give me the information, because it's the only way I'm gonna learn it. And I loved it. Even though not every project was fun, some of the first projects were awful. I remember coming into a project that y'all were doing for Penn State where you had to print over a tiny little, do you remember that, John? The Penn State job? Yeah, good. The trauma's still with me. I gotta play more Tetris.
I hear this story once a week.
Yeah, it was just like real, and everyone was losing their minds and bugging out, and I was like, should I be losing my mind too? Should I be stressed out? Like, I don't understand. But now I get it. And now we don't do that type of work anymore. Now we do stuff that we get and that we love, and it helps when we love it. It just helps do it well. You know, we don't have to think. It's just the feet just follow. You know, it feels good. So that's kind of how I came to be here.
Yeah, no, I'm glad he stayed, for sure. But so, I'm Tim. I am a product of the 80s, as you can tell. My story starts kind of the same way he did. I've been drawing my whole life. Up through high school, I was 100% convinced I was going to be a tattoo artist. All I did was illustrate. And a friend of mine's dad put a camera in my hand, and I fell in love with photography. It changed my whole life. Ended up at the Savannah College of Art and Design, and I was a photography major, but I was selfish. Very upfront with my parents about it, and my major was in 35mm photography with a focus in black and white, and I minored in illustration. So when you put that on a resume, most people are like, are you effing kidding me? Like, what do you even do? So I moved to Jacksonville after SCAD. I worked for a company called Salt Life. I'm sure you've seen their stickers all over everywhere. I shot product photography for them and promo shots. And I cooked at a Chili's. I was a fine dining cook, and just realized I hated my life. I was shooting photos of guys surfing. I couldn't be surfing because I was the one shooting the photos. By the time I could surf, they all wanted to go home. So kind of wanted to change my life, and a friend of mine was at Full Sail for Music, and he kind of was like, dude, you still draw? You ever heard of graphic design? I was like, yeah, I had a couple friends at SCAD that did that. They like made logos and shit. Like, that sounds fun. He explained a little more. I came to Full Sail, fell for that whole thing, and went there, graduated from there. That's all I'll say about that. But I ended up designing a place called Nth Degree out in Winter Garden, Florida. They're no longer around, but I was doing motion graphics for Disney. I was hired for typography, and when they heard I went to Full Sail, they were like, hey, you know motion graphics, you should know this, do all this. And again, looking out the window, dreaming about going home and printing on my air hockey table, which I had turned into a printing press. I never studied screen printing in college. To be honest, I didn't even know what screen printing was, other than that's how people made t-shirts. I didn't know you could put it on paper, but while at Full Sail, everything I illustrated was for bands. I was making posters for bands, and finally someone was like, oh, that's like what screen printing is. It's screen printed posters. And, I actually looked up lore, looked up Mama Sauce. The first screen prints I made were watching Vimeo videos of lore and of Mama Sauce, trying to figure out how long do they do this? That's time lapsed, like shit, you know, just trying to figure it out and failing. Ended up driving up back to Savannah for an event called Bandwagon. It was an event for record sales and screen print posters. I met Jeff, I met the Brian French and the French crew, and I met Nick at Mama Sauce, and I squeaked my way into a job. I was like, you know, I've been out of college for a couple of years, but I print in my garage. I'd really love an opportunity. Let me know. That's when I met Jason Craig, one of my best friends. Met some guys from Two Arms that ended up, we realized we grew up together and had no idea. So the world got a lot smaller, and I realized I really liked this world. So came home, started at Mama Sauce that next Monday, and I was there for almost 10 years. I took an 8-month hiatus after my first year, and I printed at Real Thread. And when they were a very small company, I was the third guy on the production floor and hated t-shirts. T-shirts are not, you don't hang t-shirts on your wall unless it's a vintage Metallica t-shirt. So I wanted to get back into paper, and one day Joey called me and said, you want your job back? And I started that next Monday, and I never looked back. I had a lot of really good years there. We used to do a lot of posters. That's what brought me in was, posters and the clients we had. And over the years, the business model changed, the need for income changed, the aesthetic that we were trying to go for was not this kind of rat fink punk rock aesthetic that most screen print shops have. We're very DIY in what we do in our world. Even if you are the most polished of screen print shops, there is duct tape somewhere holding something together, no matter how much money you make. So we just continued to print, and after a while I was alone. And if you know anything about Mama Sauce, we pumped out lots and lots of work. At my 5-year anniversary, I had touched almost 1 million sheets of paper, and I was there for 5 more years. But I was alone for a lot of that time. I was mixing ink, I was burning screens. I had help some days a week. John would help me when he was there. We had this really incredible girl, Macy, that was there a couple days a week. But ultimately, it came down to, do I move my girlfriend and I up to Columbia, South Carolina, where all you see are barbecue shops and Confederate flags, just to print posters for Dave Matthews Band and stuff? Or do I move her to Austin, Texas, where it's hot as hell and just as bad of a political climate as Florida is? Or do I make something work in Florida? So I went back to the Mama Sauce crew and was kind of like, you got 2 options. I can leave or we can get help. He lied on his resume. I looked at the 3 resumes and I was like, give me the kid that lied. I can teach this kid. People that say, oh, I know print, I've worked in a t-shirt shop, I've worked in this, like, they're set in their ways and you can't teach them, but someone who clearly wanted to work, someone who clearly wanted the job, clearly wanted to move from Phoenix, Arizona to Orlando, Florida to work with us, to work with me, I was like, let's get them, let's do that. So that led us to a couple of years together at Mama Sauce, and then the pandemic happened. April of 2020, we got sent home, and we were told, you'll be back in 2 weeks. 2 weeks turned into a month. A month turned into 3 months. 3 months turned into we stopped hearing from anybody. And Harry and I started getting bored. We were actually learning to model toys in my garage. We were buying resin sculpts and we were sculpting my old Ninja Turtles.
We're make the sickest bootlegs, dude.
Yeah.
We're gonna be the first ones on the scene making bootleg toys.
we had it going on, but what we quickly realized was that we had a passion for working with our hands, but we also could work together. And that was really important. I have friends who have started businesses who swore up and down to me, do never have a business partner, never have a business partner. They're the worst things ever. I got a buddy, Grizzly Wheeler, who will tell you up and down I've made the worst decision of my life. But I can tell you I've made the best decision of my life because I worked alone for 5 years. I don't ever want to do that again. And even though it is hell sometimes, I have him. So 2020, him and I in my garage, one day we were like, I have a press in my garage, or in a warehouse. Like, let's go get a warehouse. He illustrates, he's a great illustrator. I take photos, we color process.
Paint a lot, like I paint small figures too, so I was like, I can figure out a hair.
We just kind of wanted a studio. We were kind of having playtime in our garage. So the day we found a warehouse, we got a call from Mama Sauce. And I was kind of afraid to answer the phone because I was like, this is going to be one of two things. I'm going to be told I can come back to work and my dream of having my own business kind of just went out the window for the sanity of a consistent paycheck. Or I'm going to be told it's never happening again and I got to start applying to Home Depot so I can unload trucks or something because I need a job. And it was Nick asking me if I wanted to buy my department back. That phone call lasted 3 minutes. It was, give me 3 minutes, I need to make a phone call. I made a phone call. And we pooled what pandemic money we had and stimulus checks. Our families helped us, threw some cash in. And because both our dads had wanted us out of Mama Sauce since day one. They believed that Nick was going to drive it into the ground, honestly. They didn't trust him, but we did. That's kind of our downfall. We're loyal as hell. And his dad wanted him out too, and so they had no problem saying, here's a couple $100, go start your own business, like please. And they believed in us, and that was the biggest thing. Our families believed in us. At the time, our girlfriends, wives, they believed in us. Our kids believed in us, even though they couldn't say so at the time. So we got a really crappy warehouse. see Harry there getting
There's
ready.
a really sketchy loft.
It was not to code.
When you were
OSHA
up
was
there, you
never
had to
called.
be like this, and it creaked a lot.
You remember the scene in Willy Wonka when you went to the door and it got smaller and smaller? It's kind of what it was like walking up there. We didn't really know what to expect. We didn't know what we were doing. We bought a business that depended on people being in front of people, and the pandemic was still a thing. Music wasn't happening. Shows weren't a thing. And what closed Mama Sauce was that most of our niche industry business was things that depended on you being in person. Greeting cards, business cards, wedding invitations, things like that. As soon as that happened, it was gone. So we started looking to our friends, our friends at Valhalla, our friends at the Half and Half industry. They were open. They stayed open during the pandemic. And so Harry and I started questioning, why couldn't we still? What's their business model versus what Mama Sauce, what we knew. Mama Sauce was all we knew. So we reached out. I reached out to my friend Tony, who owns Industry, and asked him, what the hell did you do? My friend Jessica and her friend Dan, they own Hymns up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Mom and pop shop, literally a husband and wife that just had a kid. They all found out we were going out on our own because we made phone calls. We called people, we told people, hey, we're doing this. Like, if you know anybody that needs work. So we got a crappy shop. It was 900 degrees by 3 o'clock every day. We had a skylight that we could tan while we were printing. So we all had really good tans. But you can see our little wall banger AC unit that was supposed to keep a 1,100 square foot shop cool during the dead of summer.
It kept about like that carpeted area and about up to here at 78 degrees.
Yeah.
Everything else, but it just climbed to like 90, and it just felt like you'd stand up off the couch, be like, wow, it's incredibly hard. Only 2 feet above where I was sitting. Yeah, so we would ditch at like 3 and come back at like 8 after the sun went down.
We worked a lot of graveyard shifts.
Yeah.
But we quickly outgrew that space. Like I said, people found out that we were printing on our own, and they were gracious. They sent us overflow work. They trusted us. They knew what we could do. And so friends just came out of the woodwork. Hey, do you want to print a poster I've had forever? Hey, I got a band that needs like a couple posters to do. And so that just led to more and more work. And so eventually, Harry and I got to a point where it was like this every day, trying to walk around our shop. And when you're trying to print a poster, do a whole bunch of stuff, yeah, you run into everything. So we moved into a space in Longwood, right down the street from our original shop. Some of you guys have been there. And it gave us an actual production floor, which was huge. We, like I said, our first warehouse, everything happened in one room. I was answering, we'd be on press and I'd hear the email ding and I'd run over and check an email while he was printing a poster and come back and pull the poster off the press. It was driving us crazy because we had no departments. So we were able to have an office where we can output films and actually put our film printer. We have an exposure room, like an actual room dedicated to this that we didn't have to build and then get told by the code enforcement to tear it down and rebuild it. Get permits, kids, get permits. I have a washout area now, so that's awesome. Harry's got an entire ink station dedicated to that. In the shop before, it was like a little corner next to a very loud air compressor that went off every 35 minutes. So our hearing shot too. It's a loud industry. We were able to buy more racks. Harry and I'd be printing, if we had to print more than 300 posters, it would be like, all right, wait for those to dry, give it like 5 minutes, all right, pull them, let's go. And then, but in that humidity, posters would stick together, we'd screw up a lot.
Ink would dry out, screen would dry out.
We'd overcome a lot in that first shop to get to this point. But then we expanded. We actually outgrew the shop we were in, and our landlord was gracious enough to give us the unit next door. And over Christmas, Harry and I put a big hole in the wall. A good friend of ours, Jason, came down and put a mural in there. And we expanded. We got a second press, so now we can print more work. We have more departments now. Departments got bigger, which is really great because posters got bigger. This is actually the poster that led to everything. In the middle of the summer in 2021, my friend Jessica called and said, I have a client who needs a poster done. If you do this poster, they will keep your press busy forever. I said, okay, who's the band? And it ended up being Dirty Heads and Sublime with Rome. They are still, to this day, Dirty Heads at least, is one of our biggest clients. We do about 20 posters a summer for them, and they're the best. But all that to say, we changed our business model. When Harry and I bought Mama Sauce's equipment and started Native and started our fresh start, we looked at everything we learned at Mama Sauce versus everything we learned from talking to Dan at Valhalla, from talking to Tony at Industry, from talking to Sarah at Half and Half. And what we learned was repeat clients look different to people. Some people look at repeat work and they say, oh, if I print the same greeting card 100 times a year, I'm gonna make a bunch of money. But if I see the same band name even 10 times a year, I've made more money off that one band as a repeat client than I could have printing the same thing over and over and over again. So for us, we just looked at it. We made a list of clients that we wanted to work for, a list of artists we wanted to print for one day, and we just started going for it. That came through, and it led to bands like
floodgate opening.
Yeah, that she wasn't kidding. The management company came to us because we were crazy enough to take on work at all hours of the night. Oh yeah, you need something on Friday and it's a Tuesday? Yeah, we'll print till 4 o'clock in the morning and get it to you the next day. That's no problem. Like, we'll totally do that. And we made a name for ourselves doing that. But in doing that, we got to print for huge bands. I mean, I've been listening to Slightly Stupid since I was in high school, so to see that name come through was amazing. Newfound Glory is another one that I've been listening to since I was in high school. I was actually able to hire Clark Orr to do a poster for them when they came through to Orlando because they were looking for a logo, and I got to pass that job off to Clark, and it was another really cool event where I got to work with a friend. Nate, who did this 311 poster, he's an artist from Jacksonville. He's probably one of our biggest clients ever. Him and another guy, Miles Tang, I mean, what do you think at this point? Probably like 100 posters per
They
each
both
one?
have two of their own flat file drawers. It's about 5 to 6 extra per poster. So it's easily 200, 300
Easily.
posters total across.
And it led to really cool relationships. We printed for these merch companies, and so you're talking to the guy who's just standing behind the merch table being like, hey, you want a t-shirt, you want a poster? But then you send APs to every artist, so every artist that did that work gets their AP, and I'd throw stickers everywhere so they knew it was us, and we'd start making friends with artists. They'd be like, oh, hey, I saw you printed this poster for me, it looks really good, can you do this for this band? And that would lead to more work, and it would lead to more bands, and what that did was lead to, big name bands. Like Goose is a huge jam band right there. They're like this generation's Fish, if you guys know who Fish is. And lots of really cool work. We got to do the official 311 day posters. That's another huge one for us because, at least for me, 311 was actually the first CD I ever bought. So them coming through was like a full circle moment for me. Newfound Glory, like I said, I used to sneak on the bus and drive out 45 minutes to watch them play when I was in high school. And just Eric Church, that was a big one for us. Slightly Stupid again, like I said, Dirty Heads, biggest client of ours.
Yeah, and like a huge difference, like a good example here, is that we're printing now and mixing ink with a different process that we did at Mama Sauce. There was a lot of French paper, and it was strictly all spot color. So someone would send in a file, and the sales or the artist would call Pantones, and you'd have to match to mix that Pantone. And Pantone, there's only so many in the book, but your screen capability has over 6 million color variations. So nowadays what I do is I mix to the screen for the most part, and like Miles will call Pantones, and so I'll just try and get it in between the Pantone and the screen. It's a little bit different, like he'll call 021, which is like real bright orange. But I'll be like, dude, you don't want that. It's not gonna make this green that you're looking to make in the overlay, because every color in this print, for the most part, is overlaid on top of another color. So it's all transparent inks, whereas before printing on French paper was all opaque, with mostly all opaque and then a black key line or a dark key line. And a lot of the times now, like, we'll print stuff that doesn't have like a key line. It'll be like dither that establishes your darkest darks rather than, and so it's more of like a painting than it is graphic art. So sometimes it takes a bit of figuring out either that's like burning, different mesh, figuring out different coating techniques, burn times and stuff like that, and also like real detailed stuff like squeegee durometer, which is just a fancy word for thickness and hardness. So this is like very what you might call high fidelity print, a lot of small dots, color overlays and stuff like that. And we do both now, and man, it's like every print is fun. It's crazy. It's like I never would have guessed that I'd be here, or we'd be here, but we just kind of followed what we love to do. And when we got on our own feet, we were like, no, this is how we're doing it, and this is what we're doing. No exceptions. Okay, maybe one exception, we'll print on plastic rulers, we
did, yeah. We'll still do crazy stuff. We got to do boxes for George Harrison's estate because they were selling Christmas ornaments with the gnomes on them from the George Harrison album. We got to do the boxes for that.
So you built a rig on
I
the
built
press.
a rig to do that. And that's where like our old background comes in handy, having to print on things that you shouldn't be printing on, or that most people would look at you and say, "Why in the fucking hell are you doing that, you idiot?" But it helps. But this is actually really an example too of what it takes to get through a poster for some clients. This is what went to the show. All that is just AP for this artist. He has a following that demands that he has multiple color variants of his stuff. He always does the same kind of sort of like cool variant, a black and white, all of them glow in the dark. Usually have a warm variant and a foil variant. But like Harry said, this was very intricate when we first started getting it. If you know what spot color is, it's just color, like an exact color right next to each other, this and that. And when these would come in, and you'd be like, "Wow, that green is crazy," but it's like there's blue there. Why is there blue? Or why did he print the purple there? And I'm terrible with ink. That is Harry's world. I can print my way out of a paper bag blindfolded, but if you want me to mix ink, we're gonna be here for days on it. And he comes out with colors ink sometimes, and I look at him, I'm like, what are you even? What color is that, dude?
Like the
he
color
puts it
of
on
the
press.
frog. It looks kind of like yellow. It's like a very like cool yellow. It's not very warm. The color of that ink was like slime green.
It looked like Nickelodeon,
green,
straight up.
Yeah.
But
it's really interesting how the transparency changes.
So that's one of the really cool parts about us working together too, is that we both have different talents, but we trust each other. I don't question him anymore when it comes to ink. Like I used to just be like, "Dude, are you sure about that color? Like, why don't you look at that again before we put it on press?" Now I'm just
keep
like,
me honest. You're not
I do.
just like, "Oh yeah."
Somebody has to.
You're like, I don't know if that looks right. You had yellow?
Did you? Yeah, always add yellow. But we've both been doing this for so long that we still learn every day. It's not like we've ever mastered this. It's a 2,000+ year old process that will never be mastered. So we just try our best to keep it going and figure out new things. But there are definitely days at the end of the day we sit down and look at each other and we're like, that sucked. Today was terrible. Let's just go home. And then some days we sit down at the end of the day, we're like, hey man, like, what could we have fixed about that? Why did that screw up? Like, why did we go to lunch so mad at an inanimate object? Like, it's not our press's fault. Like, it's not, or like, it's not the paper's fault. We could have figured this out, but him and I, and that's a great learning experience because, like I said, I've been doing this for 15+ years now. He's been doing it for almost a decade, and we still learn. Things come through all the time. Art comes through all the time, and we're like, even now we see art and we're like, whoa, how did you build that? And then it's a fun process to be like, how am I going to burn this? How am I going to set these files up? How's our pre-press guy going to make sure these overlays happen? And then it's fun for him to sit there and be like, yo, this color is insane. Look at this. And then, we get to hang out and do cool stuff like this now.
Yeah.
It led to gallery work.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing real quick. I was actually talking to my fiance Ariana the other night about that print that we were struggling with on the French paper, and how it just the ink wasn't filling in the tooth of the paper, and so there was a lot of like just
a lot of gaps.
Yeah, a lot of gaps in the ink, and like it just wasn't clean. And I was saying how I was like, man, I was so ready to throw in the towel. Like I want to fucking quit. I just wanted to like just be done with it. Just send this person, and I don't care if they're mad. And Tim was like, no, dude, like let's change the angle, let's change the pressure, let's figure it out. And it ended up making it cleaner in the end. And like that's kind of like the good thing about our partnership is that like kind of keep each other in it when we're like trying to quit, which is like,
oh yeah.
Because if I was alone, I would have just printed it and been like, I don't care. And like I'm just being honest. Like not every project.
And then I would have had to tell the client, I'm really sorry.
Yeah, it's like yeah. So
it's
stoked that like we do that for each other.
No, yeah, that was definitely one of the deciding factors in because when I look back at it, Nick called and offered me the business, and I didn't even think for a second to buy it myself. Like I didn't think to own the business alone. and to hire people. Like, I was like, I need a guy, and I need a guy I trust, and I need a guy that I know that I can work with every day, and I need a guy that I know that I can call an asshole when he's being an asshole, or I can tell him I love him when I do love him, and we'll still be friends the next day. And that happens. There are days where we don't talk to each other because we're pissed off at the press, or we're pissed off that something's not going right. And now that the shop's bigger, there are days we don't talk to each other because we're busy. You know, I'll go an hour or two and be like, dude, I haven't talked to a single person. My mouth's kind of dry. I'm gonna go get a drink and say hi to Harry, you know, or see what he's doing.
Yeah. I mean, hello.
But so, because we, you know, took on so much work for bands and artists that do more than just gig posters, we got gallery prints. You know, I'm a huge Ninja Turtles nerd, and having that poster in the shop was just like one of the biggest joys of my life. The Grateful Dead print was huge. It was for Bottleneck Gallery. It was for our friend Nate. Harry's a big Dead fan.
Through printing for Dead and Co.
Through printing for Dead and Co. We listen to a lot of music of the bands we print for because we've never heard of most of them. Spider-Man was a big one. I love Spider-Man. We did a bunch of Batman stuff in the beginning when we first started getting gallery work. A gallery called Bottleneck overbought on a licensing, and they had to create way more posters than I think they originally anticipated. So we got a lot of Batman posters. We got to do really fun stuff. This Bluey poster, both our kids are obsessed with Bluey. They love them. It was the first officially licensed Bluey poster in the world, which was incredible for us because Mark, the man who designed it, he's from England. He's absolutely incredible design. He also did that Harry Potter on the end. You know, he came to us with an idea to do this, and you know, it was very specific because it's licensed. And if you know anything about Bluey, their color scheme is created so that dogs can watch the show and see it in its entirety. So the color scheme has to be exactly perfect, you know, for it to beat Bluey.
Yeah, and that's a good example of spot color that is mixed with transparencies. There's like a few areas, like on the roof. The little blue dog there is Bluey, if you don't know. But the patch on her eye is the same color as like this fur color here, the gray. And so a lot of it was spot color, but some of it was overlaid. And trying to figure that out is really interesting and really fun when it's right. It's like super frustrating. It's like I've made this comment before. It's kind of like climbing a mountain. Is like you hate every second of it, and it hurts and it's painful, and sometimes you kind of like go the wrong way. But once you reach that point where you're kind of looking out at that finished product, it feels so good, like to just replicate someone's gorgeous art, like, and especially for something that you love too. Like that definitely helps. Get excited for it, but honestly, like some of the art is just so incredible. Like the Hocus Pocus one, I think was done with colored pencil. So the detail in that is just incredible, and what the dots can do when they all kind of combine on top of each other.
Your Mountain Summit analogy really works with this Hocus Pocus as well, because we busted our ass in this Hocus Pocus. We absolutely love this print. It's one of our favorite prints that we've ever done. The client hated it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So there was fog at the summit of that mountain.
We straight up fell off that. The client got it, hated every piece of it. Told us that the art deserved better printing, this and that. I've never shown that poster to a person that didn't absolutely love it. I found out months later that the guy who ran that commission has done this multiple times to other print shops. So I don't take it too personally. He doesn't take it too personally. We kicked ass on this print. And,
I definitely did for a few days. Like, what are you thinking about, Harry?
I see him with his head against the wall, like, yeah, okay, buddy. We printed it so good. But yeah, you know, that happens sometimes. Some people just, and most of the time when it happens, it's people who don't understand screen print. They're just collectors of art. So they don't know what we go through.
Level of expectation.
I know people in here, John has gotten a poster from galleries that have giant claws. The Woody one is the one I'm thinking, where it looked like someone shot a hole in Woody's hat. It's like, how did that get through QC and get to a client? But you don't like this? Like,
yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Break my heart. I'll go play in traffic. You know, but then more stuff came in. Mandalorian, this is officially licensed Disney Plus Lucasfilm poster. I got to print George Lucas's name. Like, that's in Mark Hamill's name. Like, we get nerdy about that kind of stuff. You know, like
I love movies.
when we did the Ninja Turtle poster, it's like, oh my god, it's just Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. Like those guys created the thing I love, my kid loves. And Forrest Gump. That was actually one of our first private commission pieces that led to a lot of this gallery work. This is Mark Bell, the same guy who did the Bluey poster and the Harry Potter. That was a really crazy one where, again, I think that was probably one of the moments where I learned to let go and trust Harry on his ink mixing, because Forrest's suit and his skin color was printed with red ink first and then has an overlay of tan to make all that, and I didn't trust him at all. But when I printed it and it happened, I was like, I'm just gonna walk out of here for a second. You jump up and down, do whatever you need to do. You were right. You just relish in that.
Like a lot of these values were built underneath this yellowy cream color in his face, in the pants, and a little bit on the inside of the jacket. But you can see the color showing through on the ribbon and a little bit on the swoosh on his sneaker. But this was one also where like I was like, how the hell? Like I'd never done a transparent layer that actually lightened colors. It was always dark. It's always shadow. Like this has 3 different transparencies on it that make the shadow to build towards black. And so this concept was like completely new to me, and I'm drawing it down on a hand screen before we print it, and I'm like, I think that's right. I don't know. Tim's like, you would know.
Yeah. I got
like,
nothing. I looked at that file, opened it, and closed it immediately. I was like, it's on you, buddy. So go ahead, look at that one.
I'm like just pouring over it, like turning layers on and off, just looking at what I have drawn down, and just kind of like, you kind of have to shrug at it sometimes and try it, because it's always going to look different on press. It's kind of like, like flipping your image while you're designing something to see how it compositionally fits together. But doing that color kind of was like, I don't know if groundbreaking is the right word. It seems like a strong word, but it just kind of like
it was
maybe
monumental.
Yeah,
Sure.
I think so, because it helped me understand how these different layering processes work. Whereas this is basically a dissected CMYK where there's 2 cyans, 3 magentas, a yellow, 2 tints, and a black, instead of just your 4-color CMYK. And this is spot color, where the transparent spot color goes over the spot color and makes everything kind of wash out with like a white. So what I ended up doing was mixing this color but with a transparent base and putting enough white into it until it made this kind of chalky color to kind of match the skin tone, which was I was the most afraid of not being able to do. Like I think one of the things we worry about the most is like different like skin tone representations and how accurate we can get that, because there's so many colors that exist in someone's skin.
I'm not sure some of these designers even know that this is possible. I think they have an idea sometimes, and they hope it works because it works online. We've had to go back to many clients and explain that the multiply tool in Photoshop isn't real. I don't have a button that does that on my press. He can put transparent ink. And that's all I got. That's all I got. You know. So with the Mando, that's another good example of one that was a huge learning experience. Like he said, the guy Juan Sanos who steps those for us, he steps them CMYK. Then he goes into the cyan layer and he steps the cyan layer into 2. He finds the darkest cyans and the lightest cyans so you can distribute them. Does the same thing with the magentas. Sometimes they have 2 to 3 magentas. It's always 1 yellow, and then like Harry said, a tint to 3 tints, a key layer. The first time we did this, we didn't tint the yellow, or didn't transparent the yellow enough. Yeah. So everyone was yellow, and all him and I were looking at was Boba Fett. Oh, yeah, Boba Fett turned green. Cool, awesome.
Yep, and her
but
is green.
Ahsoka's yellow too. She's not orange. Baby Yoda is like really, really green, not Yoda green. Yeah. And so we had to go back and do that and reprint it. But again, when you're looking at stuff on screen and you're like, hey, that's like light cyan, and then you print it and you're like, wow, that actually more looks like robin's egg blue. Like, dang, did we screw that up? And with those prints, you don't know if you've messed anything up until you get to the tint layer. So when you put a tint down, like with that one, we put the first tint down and we're like, shit, finished the poster to see if we could salvage it, and we were like, oh, it looks really, really good. Like maybe they won't notice, and it was the first thing they noticed. We're like, yeah, we know. We've already started
We
trying.
didn't really know where the tolerance was, or we didn't exactly know what was wrong with it either. We were kind of scratching our heads like.
That black swan's really cool too because that is scratchboard and pencil. If you got up on it, you can see all of their pencil marks, all of their charcoal drawing marks. That's a pretty crazy one. We did
This one's all spot color.
Yeah, all spot
This is
color.
all opaque colors over each other. It makes kind of like a gradient values.
And everything always makes test prints. Test prints are probably the most fun part of what we do. There's a Hellcats test print for you. We found Glory test print. The Cure. One thing that we are starting to realize in our industry, and you guys have probably heard a lot about this AI stuff, is that a lot of bands we print for have taken a stance against AI art. They won't print it. They won't use artists that use it. We have one client that we have since figured out uses AI art. We print for them once a year. It's always Shaky Graves, and it's always for Red Rocks. Last year we got that skull down the bottom, and it looked like an old 1950s science cover, and we were so stoked. Started printing it, and when we looked at the hands looked like alien, and we were
They
like,
kind of like blend in here. The feet kind of blend into these objects.
so then we had to go back to the artist and be like, yeah, don't send us AI art anymore. Thanks though.
That was fun.
That was a really funny
Wait a
endeavor.
second.
But yeah, test prints are probably one of the most fun parts of what we do because we curate them now. Since we do all posters, we can be like, hey, this layer might look really cool on this. At one point, Harry had a poster that was all leaves and trees from things that we printed that had leaves and trees on. It was like, oh, we can just do that. And through all this, we've had a lot of really amazing art come from really amazing friends. Our buddy Jason, he's one of my best friends in the world, came down and free-handed this on our wall. He had no idea what he was doing when he came down, and just told him I wanted to look like an old postcard from Florida, and 2 days later this is what we had. And so a lot of our friends donate art to us. Kendrick Kidd from Jacksonville did our actual Frankenstein logo. My wife Katie did our little Bobby Hill Born to Print. Our good friend Lamire over in Sweden did those gothic looking ones. Tron up in Jacksonville again, he did the truck, and our friends over at Fried Design in Missouri did that native poster for us on the bottom. That was actually a beer can label that the beer company didn't want to use. It didn't say native, it was the woman driving through a field of hops, but Josh, who owns Fried, is an old Florida boy. He knows about the groves. So he threw some orange groves in there and made it an old Florida postcard. I love old Florida and old, souvenir type stuff like that, so it really made sense. But yeah, and then this is why we do everything. Those are our kids. That's Milo, he's 2.5, and that's Daff, she's 4.5. They're hopefully the next generation of what we do. They both really showed interest in art and really like coming to the shop. Milo loves it. We have Spider-Man posters on the wall, and Daff loves to get dirty in the ink. So hopefully we have 2 little printers amongst us next. If not, company's gonna have to go to Jacob because he's our first hire, and we're really
That guy
give
over
a wave,
there.
Jacob.
Everybody look at him.
Everyone look at Jacob. That was actually a really cool part of Harry and I's growth. Was we, for the first year or 2, were like, man, this sucks. We got to do all this by ourselves, but we don't want to hire someone and their livelihood be dependent on us. But then it got to a point where Harry and I were like, hey, we need to spend more time with our families and our kids, and we can't be here 17 hours a day every day. Let's get help. And Jacob's been more than great. It was really exciting to hire him. He actually won our Spot Showcase award this year. So we're stoked to have you, man. So yeah, awesome. But yeah, so we just want to say thank you guys for coming out and listening to the story of 2 nerds that get to print posters every day. So we appreciate you guys.
All right, we have time for a few questions. Anyone want to start us off?
No one has to ask me. What do you got?
So, I'm assuming 50-50 partners, maybe not. What are some challenges that you guys have kind of faced with those things? I know a lot of people are always like, don't be 50-50 partners. That's a big one, but it seems to be working out. So
the biggest challenge is sports seasons. I watch baseball and he watches football, so we have no one to talk to when our teams are playing. Other than that, I mean, personally, I like I said in the talk, I was told that too. I've never seen it like that because I always work with friends. I've always worked well with others. I'm a really big self-starter and motivator, but I'm not really good at like following through because of my ADD, and I'll just start doing a million other things. But having him there with me, I feel like I'm more grounded. I would say the biggest challenge is feeling like you're abandoning them. Like, we both have kids, we both have families. Our kids get sick, our kids have things going on at school, and there are days where I have to stay home with my kid because he's sick, or he's got to take his kid to like dance class and stay there because his wife is working. And so you have this guilt of like, I left my friend. Like,
yeah, or sometimes you're not there and like, oh, I'll come back and print this real quick, and then they send you a picture of something horrible going wrong, and you're just like, oh my god, I can't believe he's there, but I'm just not dealing with that. But a big part of it is that we're really transparent with each other. We're very honest, and we communicate often. If something new happens, we're talking about it the day it happens. We're not kind of like, oh god, how do I tell Tim, or oh man, how do I tell Harry? We're just really relaxed, and there are definitely times where we don't agree, and like it's like, God, he's got such a blockhead. But you come around because you remember that the reason why you're doing it is the same as this person. We both have the same reason why, which is to build something that not only builds, like, feeds our family, but also like feeds our soul and what we want to do with our lives.
yeah.
It's powerful, and that goes a long way.
I think like you said, there's really no challenging part of it because we're friends. We were friends at Mama Sauce. We were friends outside of Mama Sauce. He was in my wedding. We hung out during the pandemic. Like, and that was a big one for me. It was like, as I've gotten older, my friend circle has gotten smaller, and being able to tolerate someone like a marriage. I mean, we basically had a COVID baby. That is essentially what we did, and that is what Native is for us. And our business partnership is like a marriage. We have to talk. We're gonna get mad at each other. There are days where we get mad at each other, 100%. But if we didn't talk to each other, that would be the most challenging part, is not having communication. That was what we learned, and we're very upfront with each other when we started Native. Was we got to talk to each other because no one talked to us at Mom's House. Like, you were kept in the dark.
Like, talking about money was like super, like, don't do it too.
Yeah.
So like, I definitely carry that nerve of like, oh man, I don't want to ask Tim about money, or what we're gonna do about this, or how much this is gonna cost, or like what we have in inventory. Like that's probably the hardest part, is talking about business stuff. Everything else is super easy.
Yeah, I guess that is true. We don't really ever talk business stuff. We just kind of print.
Yeah, we'll kind of like be like, oh hey, yeah, you see that thing? Like, this is going on with the numbers. Yeah. Like, let's talk about that long, and we'll talk about it for like maybe 15 minutes. It's not. Anytime I'm nervous about talking about something, it is just talked about. It's just out there. There's no judgment. There's no expectation. There's no hidden agenda from either one of us.
We both knew going into this that there was a chance we might not be able to pay each other for a very long time. At that moment, that's when living on unemployment helped with starting our business, because COVID happened. But we got to a point where we were able to pay each other, and it was very easy to not have to have that conversation. Because that was the challenging part in the beginning, would be like, hey man, like, I gotta get diapers, or like, hey, my kid needs swimming lessons, and it's like, oh, we haven't printed anything in 3 weeks, like, we can pay each other like $200 each today, and that only lasted a couple months. But again, I think the biggest challenge is I have no one to talk baseball with, and he has no one to talk football with. Like, that sucks. I mean, like, he told me yesterday, Ken Griffey Jr. lives in Orlando. Did anyone else know that?
My dad met him the other day.
What?
Boom, there it is. He's getting closer, man.
He's closer. I'm getting Ken. Yes, all right. I'm gonna meet Griffey in like a Publix. It's gonna happen.
But I follow baseball subreddit for you.
It's true.
Stay informed.
I don't. Patriots suck.
Patriots rule.
Any other questions?
Do you guys have any resources or tips for people who want to get started in printing, but they don't know where to start, or what kind of equipment to start using?
I mean, it's all what you want to spend. Honestly, there's really great resources like RyanNet and SilkScreenSupplies.com that sell small business packages, from garage setups to small business setups. My first setup was an air hockey table that I found at a garage sale. I put a shop vac on it and some clamps, and I made a press. The best thing I can say from my experience with it is I just started following screen printers and I started messaging them and asking them questions. How did you build this? Why did you do this? How did you do that? Our good friend Aaron runs a shop over in the packing district called the Space Station, and they do t-shirt water-based classes there. You can learn to print discharge and water-based over there. So signing up for any seminars or anything like that, it's really just, in what we do, it's so DIY that you just kind of have to figure it out. Like, if you don't have the room in your house to do it, then like finding a place to do it or finding friends to help. Like, you can always kid up a shop like us and be like, hey, I have a screen, but I need it burned. Can I come burn my screen? And we can help you do that and stuff like that. But getting started is really just getting started. You can literally put a screen on your kitchen table and pull it, and that's a start.
I think it was one of the first times I came over to your house to hang out. He had like invites or index cards or something you were printing by hand, just like no shirt on, like just like printing at the kitchen table. I was like, damn, this dude fucking loves printing.
Yeah, I've done some
whatever
crazy
is necessary.
Yeah. I used to watch Sandlot a lot when I printed on VHS. I'd print a room in my house. Just print ridiculous things. My poor wife.
I remember another time I came over and there's discharge exhaust coming out of his window as I'm walking up his driveway. It smells like eggs.
Hellcats bandanas.
yeah, that's right. On that huge janky screen that weighs like 40 pounds.
Yeah.
God,
but yeah,
so heavy.
I would do anything to print, and that's why I realized that this is what I wanted to do. And when I realized that he would follow me into battle, I was like, fuck it, let's do it, man. Like, if you're as crazy as I am, you can die right next to me on this press. I don't care. Like.
Do you remember how the conversation went with the person? Oh, sorry. Do you remember how the conversation went with the person who didn't like the Hocus Pocus poster? Like how you dealt with that?
Oh yeah, I went and cried. But no, they got the prints. He opened them, sent us an email that was very angry, and that's happened maybe 3 times in our career.
Slightly rude.
Slightly rude. Yeah, definitely had a tone. What I do usually when that happens is I talk to him, and like, how do you want to approach this? Because this wasn't on us. I don't think, like, if it's on us, like if we messed up a color or we sent bad prints or something, I'll take that hit all day, and I'll apologize and I'll offer. I'll usually go in at night and reprint it or something. But with that one,
sometimes like we can see where we went wrong.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
If we get called out, and we go back and look, we blasted through that because we had too much going on that week. With that one specifically, I offered to reprint it. I was like, we'll reorder, we'll do it on us. We'll take the hit, the financial hit. Send us back the prints, and like we'll reprint them. That's when he said he thought that they deserved a better printer and better printing, and wanted a full refund. And so I made him destroy every single one.
Yeah, send them back or just like show proof.
I made him prove to me that he destroyed every single one. But essentially, we just cut ties with him. As a business, you can fire clients. I wouldn't necessarily say we fired him, but I did say, like, if you want to come back again, I'm more than happy to print for you. If not, this isn't a loss for us. Because at a certain point, like, I have to defend our business, and I know what we do. The people that come back are usually not in the industry. They're not even designers. That guy wasn't a graphic designer. He wasn't the artist. He's just a guy that liked Hocus Pocus that started a private commission group. So he doesn't know what we went through to print that. He doesn't know that 13 colors later on, pearlescent paper that like we printed probably one of the best Hocus Pocus posters ever.
Colors.
But it's hard, I'm the first one to take the hit. I'll open the email and just immediately, I'm sorry. Like, what can we do to fix it? Because generally, we just want the posters in the world, and we want people to love them. I grew up putting things on my wall that I loved, and it's such a rad feeling to know that we print stuff that people put on their wall. And so when people don't like it, like, I want to fix it so quickly. But we've never had someone that literally told us that like we were like basically terrible. And so we were just kind of like, you know what? Let's just cut that tie. We had a client tell us that we like didn't match a Pantone quite well once. We reprinted it and explained to them why the Pantone wouldn't look right because we were printing on this specific colored paper that was doing this. And the second time they came back and they were like, oh, it still doesn't, you guys just up, like, you guys, and wanted their money back. And that's another situation where we're just like,
Hey,
well, no.
Out of the hundreds and hundreds of jobs that we've done, it feels like there's been less than a handful of people who have been less than excited to see what they get. And that kind of just feels statistically that that's probably on them, not on us. Their expectations maybe are a little different than the general expectation of, capabilities. Because
we did have it happen once with the gallery. We had a couple posters that UPS decided to Ace Ventura while they were going through. We have two specific places, Austin, Texas, and New York City, New York, that we cannot get prints to without damage unless we freight it most of the time. I don't know what it is about those two cities, but that's where damage usually happens. The prints got to bottleneck, and half of them were damaged because UPS, like I said, they destroyed them. And so they took that opportunity to like pick out every single thing they didn't like about the print. And we took that as, you're just mad that you gotta have these reprinted, so let's talk. And I worked that out with them, and they sent us that Grateful Dead. They still send work, so it really is how you.
got damaged.
And it still got damaged, which is crazy.
He's like, we're doing freight only.
New York City sucks. But yeah, I try to mend those relationships if I feel like they're worth it. If you're sending me one poster a year and you don't like the one poster you got, I'm not going to put him and I through that. It's just not worth it. But if you're a client that's been good to us or like sent us work and we genuinely mess something up, like I'll mend that relationship all day. Like you can ask my wife. I come home, we feed the kids, put them to bed, and then I'm like, I got to go back to work because I got to fix something. And she's so supportive for doing that, but we want to get to a point where we don't have to do that. So Harry and I, really try hard on press. Like if we notice something's messing up as we go, we'll stop. We'll start over. We try to avoid that conversation as much as possible now because I didn't like having to have them. I only like answering emails when they're like, you guys kick ass, or you guys did a really good job, or I want to send you more work. When it's like, hey, you did something wrong, I'm just like, shit, man, now I have to be professional. And I didn't get into screen printing to be professional. Like, I want to hang out with him, like print some posters, like go outside and play with my dog. I don't know, like just want to do normal stuff. But then I actually have to like be the customer service department. Like that sucks. Sometimes I want to be like, hey, do you want to talk to him? Like you can get on this email thread, Mr. Ink Mixer. But I'm also a people pleaser, so I do try to mend that relationship. But again, like I said, you'll find, even as graphic designers, there's clients that'll push your buttons to a point where you're just like, you know what, this isn't a good relationship for either of us. And I knew that if he sent us another poster, it would be the same thing. That he'd be sending us money, and I'd be sending that money right back to him because he would find something wrong. I found out that guy does that with multiple print shops, so I didn't feel too bad like when it happened. I actually talked to another client that we were printing for at the time and was like, you ever heard of this guy? Is he okay? Like, because I feel like I screwed up a relationship. He's like, that man has never gotten a poster to any of his commissioned people because he hates every single thing he sees. And I'm like, all right, cool, it wasn't me. It wasn't him. Right. If they had said otherwise, Harry and I probably would have packed up shop and we wouldn't be standing here right now. We'd be like, nah, we screwed up. Not really. But. All right.
Were you ever worried about, or nervous about taking clients that your, friends were, sending to you? Or were you guys at, this stage in your career where you were, pretty confident in your abilities and, taking on stuff?
We were super confident that we could do pretty much anything that was being sent to us, even when we had never seen it before. I think that we were so hungry to develop a foundation of clients that we took anything that came along, whether it was through friends or an artist who we've recently done something through an agency for, or even someone who's completely new. Like that Mandalorian is a good example, and another one that came with it was a Kill Bill, which is the same process, and two of which they had the same problem. They both had a yellow that was too opaque, and they be reprinted. But now when we print that art, it comes not necessarily second nature, but we don't have to sweat over it as hard, or run as many overages or mix as much ink. So I think that there was a level of confidence coming from Mama Sauce where everything was ridiculously fast paced. It was get it in the shop, get it into production, get it into finishing, and get it out the door. But also hold a really high standard. Make sure it's perfect. as it can be, and that was really hard to do with speed, especially in a medium that's so volatile like screen printing, where you have the paper being affected by the atmosphere. You have the screen that doesn't have emulsion on it yet being affected by the atmosphere. There's the after it's burned, how much stencil is washed out of the emulsion can affect how the screen stretches in a certain direction. So there's all these variables, not to mention the smoothness of the paper, or how fine the dots are, or how big the coverage is. Like, these are all things that attribute to mistakes. And when you have that many in a process, you kind of have to have some level of tolerance that this is handmade. I mean, you look at like handmade carpentry, masonry, like blacksmithing work, that's not perfect. If it's made in a mold, yeah, sure, because you can take time to fix all the imperfections. Where if you take time to like fix all the imperfections in screen printing, it takes time. So if
They've never fixed it. Yeah.
If we don't have the time, we have to figure out how to do it fast. So we were so used to working at such a fast pace and being on, like just looking at every detail, trying not to mess it up too bad, that anything that came into our shop, we were like, our tolerance level is way lower.
Yeah.
Like, we know what this is. We know that this is going to a show, and there's a bunch of hungry fans who want to be the first one to get that paper because there's only 1,600 of them, and there's a whole stadium of people here who want a poster. And so that small little dot, someone might appreciate that as an imperfection that only exists on their numbered edition, their one poster. They understand the process. There's not this like scrutiny, and like some people, like, because I like to float around the different band like groups and stuff on Reddit and wherever, and like watch people and see what they say. Like, I'm a total lurker for like what people are saying about posters. And a lot of the time when they're scrutinizing the poster, it's about the art and not about the print. They're like, oh, looks like so-and-so did this, or someone this age did that. And it's like, it's not a real critique. Like, you're just giving your opinion. It's not what you think you're not, being
personally,
fancy, with your opinion.
I took it as when people sent us work, that they trusted us, that they knew what we did, they saw what we did beforehand.
Yeah, we had
and
a
they
reputation.
knew that we could handle it. We were kind of led to believe that everyone else was competition for a very long time. Basically, we would be told, like, if it doesn't get printed by us, like, someone else is going to get that money and someone else is going to take that print, or it's not going to get printed. And what we learned when we went out on our own is that everyone wants to help each other. Our end goal is to get the print made. We don't care if it prints it. Like, if we can't do it, we want to make sure it gets printed. I can't tell you how many times I've sent someone to Valhalla or to Half and Half or to our friend Brandon up in Atlanta, or I've even tried to send people to Ashley over at UCF. Like, hey, can you do this really quick job, because I don't want to. But it was a huge awakening for us when they called, like, hey, can you help us out with this poster? And then another shop called, hey, we're overbooked, can you take this poster? Hey, we are so busy this time of year that this client that usually sends us thousands of posters needs to now send you thousands of posters. We were like, wait, you're just giving us this client? Like,
and the client was stoked. They're like, we didn't know anyone was printing on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Like,
so like, I always took it as like Harry and I made a name for ourselves. We worked really hard, and that if you saw anything that came out of Mama Sauce, you knew that not only were we crazy enough to print something stupid, like that we actually could do it. So for me personally, it was like this almost like badge of honor. Like, they trust me. Like, they didn't just believe it was Mama Sauce. They knew it was us. Like, they knew that we were the printers, not some big machine behind us, So that was a really cool. Like, I remember getting like a phone call from Tony from industry and being like, hey, can you do this poster for us? And it was like, what's the catch? Like, what, do I owe you money? No, it needs to get printed, and we can't print it. Oh, okay. He's like, yeah, just keep that client because they're in St. Augustine. And we're like, that doesn't happen. Like, but then as like the years went on, we were like, damn, we're all friends. Like, we went to Flatstock in Austin and South by Southwest and met so many printers that were like, what's up, dudes? Like, let's go, like, have a beer. Like, let's talk printing. And we nerded out with so many dudes for the first time in years that were, like, just like us. You know, like, what do you do when a crazy poster comes through? Oh, well, I do this crazy process where I don't leave the shop until 1,000 posters are done. And we're like, we do, like, 250 a day and go home. We'll do 250 the next day and go home. Like, what do you say? You're crazy, man. But it was fun, you know, and then we were opened up to this whole new world of, like, no, we're all friends. Like, we just, where we worked, didn't print the same type of work. So they wouldn't send it to us. And there's clients now that we have that we realized we were printing for while at Mama Sauce that we had no idea there was even a thing. You know, the last posters him and I printed at Mama Sauce were for the band Rush. And it was like a commemorative 2112, yeah. And it was for a gallery called Collections that handles old school bands. Like we did a Aerosmith poster for them. We did The Cure through them. But we looked back at their Instagram and it was like, hey, we printed that poster, but like we never even knew your name, like because we were kind of kept in the dark. Like we were the dudes in the back of the shop in the corner slinging ink, you know? And so that was like a really cool thing. And I love getting able to work with friends who trust us, you know, like
It's a small world.
yeah. There's really in throughout the country, I think there's less than 10 of us that do what we do in the capacity that we do. There's guys printing in their garages all day. A lot of the guys that we do posters for, they print their own posters too if it's a small run.
Yeah.
But when it's 500 posters, you don't want to do that to your arm or your back. So they come to us. He knows.
Yeah, there.
All right, on that note, thank you so much. Let's clap it up.